The neon pulse of a world where every flickering light represents a choice, a chance, or a hidden secret. We capture the high-stakes drama of the streets through a cinematic lens of glowing colors. Subscribe today and keep your finger on the pulse of the night. I left my reading glasses at the pharmacy counter. Of all the things to forget on a Tuesday evening, it had to be those. Margaret had given them to me for my birthday 3 years ago. The simple, wire-rimmed kind, she said, made me look like a professor. I drove back 20 minutes after closing, expecting to knock on the glass and catch Ray locking up. Instead, Ray unlocked the door, pulled me inside, and pressed his back against it. "Mr. Calloway," he said. His voice was barely above a whisper. "I need you to see something before you leave tonight. And I need you to promise me you won't fall apart." I almost laughed. I was 67 years old. I had buried my wife. I had built Calloway Family Pharmacy from a single storefront into 4 locations across central Ohio. I had survived things that would have broken younger men. Nothing Ray showed me on that back office monitor could possibly undo me. I was wrong. Let me back up. Earlier that evening, my son-in-law had taken me to dinner at Hargrove Steakhouse, the kind of place where the booths are deep and the lighting is low, and important conversations happen under the pretense of celebrating. Derek Simmons, married to my daughter Claire for 11 years, had been unusually attentive all evening, refilling my water, laughing at things I said that weren't funny. He had slides on his tablet, actual slides, about what he called transitional management. "You've been forgetting things, Dad." He used that word deliberately. He had started calling me Dad around the time my memory first slipped, as though the word itself were a legal document. The inventory discrepancy last month. The supplier call you missed. Claire and I have talked, and we think it's time to let someone younger handle the day-to-day. The inventory discrepancy he was referring to was $4,000. Missing. Unaccounted for in the quarterly reconciliation. I had spent 2 weeks trying to find where it had gone, blaming myself, wondering if the fog I'd been living in for the past 8 months had finally made me dangerous to my own business. That fog. I should explain the fog. It had started subtly, forgetting words mid-sentence, walking into a room and standing there blank. Twice I had driven to the main location on Sycamore Street and sat in the parking lot, unable to remember whether I had already been inside or was just arriving. My physician ran tests. "Mild cognitive impairment," he said gently, "possibly early onset." He said to reduce stress, delegate more responsibility, and consider whether full-time management was still appropriate for my stage of life. At dinner, Derek had the succession documents already drafted, a management transfer agreement that would give him operational control of all 4 pharmacies, while I retained nominal ownership. It was, he explained, the most dignified arrangement. "You've worked hard enough, Dad. Let us carry it now." I signed nothing. I told him I needed the weekend to review. The relief on his face was immediate and enormous, the kind of relief that comes not from concern but from certainty. He already believed I would sign. He was already celebrating something I had not yet given him. I forgot my glasses on the way out. That small, ordinary carelessness is the only reason any of what comes next happened at all. Ray Nguyen had worked for me for 9 years. He was 26 when I hired him, fresh out of pharmacy school, serious and meticulous in a way that reminded me of myself at that age. He knew the inventory the way some people know their own handwriting, instinctively, immediately aware of anything that didn't belong. In the back office, he pulled up footage from the security camera mounted above the dispensary computer. The timestamp read 6 weeks earlier. I watched Derek walk in through the employee entrance using the code I had given him when Claire asked if he could help with weekend deliveries. I watched him sit at the dispensary computer, open the inventory management system, and begin transferring line items. Not products, not physical inventory. Digital adjustments. Small reductions spread across dozens of SKUs, each one individually beneath the threshold that would trigger an automatic audit flag. He did it again the following Tuesday. And the Tuesday after that. "I found it when I was doing the year-end reconciliation," Ray said. "He wouldn't look at me. I almost didn't say anything. He's your family." But then I thought, if it were my grandfather, he stopped. The total across 6 weeks was not $4,000. It was $63,000, redirected to a vendor account I didn't recognize. A vendor account that, when I would later trace it, belonged to a shell company registered in Delaware, under a name I had never heard. I sat down on a metal folding chair in that back office and put my face in my hand. Not from weakness. From the specific, physical weight of a thing you suspected but prayed was wrong. I had noticed Derek watching me those past 8 months with an expression I had interpreted as concern and now understood was calculation. I had noticed Claire growing quieter, more watchful. I had told myself it was because they were worried about me. I was right that they were watching. I was wrong about why. Ray put his hand on my shoulder. What do you want to do? I sat there for a long moment. My glasses were on the counter beside me, exactly where I had left them. The fog I had been living in, the slipping memory, the dizziness that came in the evenings, the way simple tasks had begun to feel like moving through deep water. 8 months of it. I thought about what Derek had said at dinner. Let us carry it now. Something shifted in my chest. Not grief. Something colder. I picked up my glasses, put them on, and everything came into focus. I need to make a phone call, I said. And then I need you to show me everything you found. My brother Frank answered on the second ring. 71 years old, retired county prosecutor, still sharp as a file edge. He had been trying to get me to slow down for years, but not like this. I need you at the house, I said. Tonight. Tom. His voice went quiet in the way it always did before something serious. What happened? I think someone has been making me sick, I said, and I think I know who. There was a pause. Then Frank said what he always said before the hard ones. I'll be there in 40 minutes. He was there in 30. The kitchen table looked like a crime scene by midnight. Ray had brought printed records. I had pulled the last 8 months of my own medical file, the prescription receipts, the lab results, the physician's notes. Frank spread them across the table with the practiced efficiency of a man who had spent decades organizing evidence into arguments. What Frank found first was the supplement. 3 months ago, Derek had given me a bottle of what he called a cognitive support formula, a birthday gift, organic and expensive, the kind of thing Claire had been reading about online. He had been very specific about the dosage. 2 capsules every morning without fail. Frank held the bottle to the light. Then he set it down carefully and looked at me. When did the fog start? I counted backward. 8 months ago in the broad sense. But the worst of it, the forgetting, the confusion, the dizziness, those had started closer to 3 months ago. I had been taking the capsules exactly as instructed. Frank drove to a lab at 7 the next morning with samples from the capsules and a copy of my blood work. He had a contact there, a toxicologist named Dr. Elaine Park, who had worked with the county for 15 years. She owed Frank a favor that neither of them ever discussed specifically, but that apparently covered emergency weekend analysis. By Sunday afternoon, I had my answer. The capsules contained manganese in concentrations 14 times the safe daily limit. Chronic manganese toxicity mimics early cognitive decline with extraordinary precision. It causes memory disruption, impaired executive function, personality changes, and a persistent neurological fog that looks, on paper, like early dementia. It does not kill. It dismantles. It makes a person seem, to a reasonable physician with a 40-minute appointment slot, like a man whose mind is beginning to fail. Dr. Park's written summary used the word deliberate twice. I sat in Frank's car in the parking lot of a Denny's and read the report 3 times. The cup of coffee in my hand had gone cold. Outside, Ohio was doing what Ohio does in November, gray and patient, and without sentiment. I thought about Derek, about the way he had refilled my water at dinner, about the 11 years he had been in my family, learning its rhythms, its weaknesses, its assets, about Claire's voice growing quieter as the months passed, the way she had begun deferring to him on things she had always handled herself. I thought about Margaret's photograph on my desk at the Sycamore Street location, taken right after we opened the second store. She was laughing, holding scissors above a ribbon, already looking sideways at me the way she did when she thought I was being too serious about something that deserved joy. She had never trusted Derek. She had said so once, carefully, the way she said things she was uncertain about. He wants the right things for the wrong reasons, she had told me. I hadn't known what she meant then. I knew now. I had 5 days. Derek expected me to sign the management transfer agreement on Friday. He had scheduled a meeting with his attorney and mine, had already, I would later discover, told 2 of my 4 store managers that a leadership transition was coming. He had been moving pieces for months. He believed the board was already his. He had no idea the fog was lifting. That Sunday night I stopped taking the supplements. I flushed every capsule down the bathroom sink and then stood there looking at the bottle in my hand. This ordinary-looking bottle with its cheerful green label and its lie printed in clean sans-serif font. I did not sleep much that night. But for the first time in months, my thoughts were mine again. Monday morning I called my accountant, Diane Reyes. 22 years together. She had helped Margaret and me survive the 2008 recession, had restructured us after the third location nearly broke us, and had walked me through Margaret's estate with a quiet competence that I still felt gratitude for every time she answered the phone. "I need you to pull everything," I told her. "Every account Derek has touched, every vendor he added, every transfer above $500 in the past 12 months. Silence for 2 seconds. "How deep does it go?" "I don't know yet. That's what I need to find out. Give me until Wednesday morning." I gave her until Wednesday morning. On Monday afternoon, I played the role Derek expected. I called him, let my voice be tired, a little confused. I told him I had been thinking about the transfer agreement and that I was leaning toward yes. I just wanted to go through a few things before Friday. He was warm on the phone, reassuring. The particular tone of warmth that belongs to people who have already won. "Take all the time you need, Dad," he said. On Tuesday, I drove to the Sycamore Street location and spent 4 hours in the back going through physical inventory with Ray. We found 3 more vendor accounts I didn't recognize. We found a standing order for a supply category that hadn't been stocked at any of my locations in over a year. We found a service contract, signed with my signature, for a maintenance company that did not exist. My signature. I studied it for a long time. It was close, not exact, but close enough to pass casual review. Practiced. I thought about the fog. How convenient it must have seemed. How useful. A business owner with documented cognitive decline who couldn't reliably track his own paperwork. Tuesday night, Frank came back to the kitchen table with something new. He had spent the day making calls, the kind of quiet, thorough inquiry that a former county prosecutor can conduct without leaving fingerprints. What he found was that the Delaware shell company connected to Derek's vendor account was one of 3 such companies, all registered within the same 6-month window, all sharing a registered agent. The registered agent's name meant nothing to me, but Frank knew it. He had prosecuted a fraud case 12 years ago that involved the same name at the periphery. Not charged, not convicted. Present in the way that certain people are always present at the edges of financial crimes, useful and deniable. Someone had helped Derek set this up. Someone with experience. Someone who understood how to structure theft so it looked like administrative error. "He didn't do this alone," Frank said. "I know. Do you know who helped him?" I had a suspicion. I needed Wednesday to confirm it. Diane called at 7 Wednesday morning. I could tell from the first syllable that it was worse than she had expected. The total redirected across all accounts over 14 months was not $63,000. It was $412,000. Spread thin. Moved carefully. Timed to coincide with periods when my symptoms were most pronounced. Whoever had advised Derek understood accounting and they understood medical timeline. The money had been moved during the months when my physician's notes documented the highest levels of cognitive disruption. The months when I was least likely to notice. The months when any discrepancy I did flag could be attributed to my own failing mind. $412,000. I sat with that number for a long time. Callaway Family Pharmacy was worth, conservatively, $3.5 million across all 4 locations. The real estate we owned outright, the established accounts, the goodwill Margaret and I had built across 30 years of being the pharmacy that knew your name. Derek didn't just want the money he had already taken, he wanted the entire business. The management transfer would have given him operational control first, and from there, I had no doubt, he would have found a way to push me into full divestiture. A man who plans this carefully over 14 months doesn't stop at the first step. Wednesday afternoon, I called my attorney, Leonard Marsh. I told him I needed to restructure the Friday meeting. I told him I was bringing Frank. I told him what Frank and Diane had found. Leonard was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "Do you want to give him a chance to confess privately, or do you want it on record?" "On record," I said. "I want it on record." I also called Detective Vivian Cole that afternoon. She worked financial crimes out of the Columbus field office and had consulted on 3 of Frank's old cases. She knew how to be present in a room without being visible until the moment you needed her. "Friday morning," I said. "I'll give you the signal." Wednesday night, I did the one thing I had been avoiding. I drove to Claire and Derek's house. She let me in with that careful smile she had been wearing for 8 months, the one that looked like concern but had begun to feel, now that my mind was clearer, like something rehearsed. We sat at her kitchen table and I looked at my daughter, 38 years old, Margaret's eyes in a face that was still young enough to surprise me sometimes. I asked her directly, "Did you know?" She looked at her hands. A long time passed. "He said it was borrowing," she finally said. "He said he was going to pay it back before you noticed. He said you'd be better off without the stress of managing everything. And the supplements." Her face changed then. Something fractured behind it. "He said they were good for you. Claire. She looked up. They were making me sick. I watched her understand it. Not the financial part, she had understood that, at least partially for some time. But the other part, the deliberate, clinical, months-long effort to make her father appear to be losing his mind. She put her hand over her mouth and sat very still. I didn't ask her to choose sides that night. I just told her to be at the Friday meeting. Thursday I prepared. I had Diane prepare a complete forensic accounting summary and a bound document with tabbed sections. I had Ray compile the surveillance footage onto a clean drive with timestamps and annotations. I had Frank's toxicology report notarized. I had Leonard prepare a counter-document to the management transfer agreement, one that restructured ownership of all 4 pharmacies into a trust that neither Derek nor anyone associated with him could touch. I also drove to each of my 4 store locations on Thursday afternoon, talked to my staff, not about what was coming, just checked in, the way I used to before the fog had made even this feel exhausting. Ray at Sycamore Street. Patrice at the Grove City location. Hector and his team at Westerville. I shook hands and asked after families and looked at the shelves that Margaret and I had stocked together 30 years ago. Whatever happened Friday, this was still mine. These were still my people. Thursday night, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of coffee I could actually taste, black and bitter and real, and I thought about Margaret. She had been gone 4 years. Pancreatic cancer. The same story that takes too many people too fast. Near the end, she had held my hand and said the practical things she always said. Take care of yourself. Eat breakfast. Don't let the business run you. And then, softer, almost as an afterthought. Be careful who you let carry things for you. Just because someone offers to carry the weight doesn't mean they should have it. I had not understood her then. I understood her now. Friday morning I dressed in the gray suit I had worn to Margaret's service. Not from grief, from intention. Some days require that kind of weight. Leonard's conference room was on the 14th floor of a building downtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a long mahogany table, morning light coming in flat and honest off the Columbus skyline. Derek arrived at 9 sharp with his own attorney, a young man in an expensive suit who radiated the particular confidence of someone who believes the meeting is already over. Derek himself looked good, rested. He shook my hand with both of his and said I was looking better than I had on Tuesday. He had brought coffee in a tray from a place Claire liked. He set it on the table like a man furnishing a room that was already his. Claire sat at the far end of the table. She had come. Her face was composed in a way that cost her something. I let everyone settle. Let the small talk run its course. Then I opened my briefcase. Before we proceed, I said, I'd like to go through a few figures, just to make sure we're all working from the same numbers. Derek's attorney leaned forward, prepared to redirect. But Derek waved a hand. He was not worried. He had built this moment on 8 months of careful erosion, a fog he had manufactured. A man he had watched lose his grip and documented helplessness. He was not worried because he believed I was no longer capable of surprising him. I put Diane's summary on the table first, opened it to the tab marked with the Delaware company name. I watched Derek's face. He covered it quickly, but not quickly enough. A flicker of calculation, rapid and cold, before the confusion he was performing settled back into place. I don't recognize this vendor, he said. No, I said. You wouldn't want to. It's registered to a man named Douglas Harwell. He's outside, actually. Detective Cole would like to speak with both of you. The door opened. Derek's attorney pushed back his chair. Derek himself went still in the specific way that people go still when they understand that a room they walked into confidently is not the room they thought it was. I put the toxicology report on the table next, then the surveillance drive, then Diane's full accounting, $412,000, 14 months, organized by date, by amount, by account. The supplements you gave me for my birthday, I said, contained 14 times the safe limit of manganese. Dr. Elaine Park's report is on page 7. She uses the word deliberate twice. Derek's attorney touched his arm. Don't say anything. Derek said nothing. He looked at Claire. She was looking at the table. I did not raise my voice. There was no need to. The documents did the speaking, and they had the same quality that good evidence always has, the quality of being simply, undeniably true. You thought the fog would last, I said. You thought by the time I could see clearly again there would be nothing left to see. You were wrong. Detective Cole stepped fully into the room. Another officer came in behind her. Leonard was already on his feet. When they walked Derek out, I watched his face one last time. Not with satisfaction, not with the particular heat of revenge, with something quieter and more complicated, the feeling of a man who has seen what greed does to a person and is grateful, purely and simply, to have caught it in time. Claire stayed in the room after everyone else had gone. We sat across from each other at that long mahogany table with the Columbus skyline behind her and the bound documents between us, and for a long time neither of us spoke. "I should have told you sooner," she said. "Yes. I thought he would fix it. I thought if I gave him time he would put it back and you'd never have to know." "Claire." I looked at my daughter. Margaret's eyes, Margaret's stubborn certainty, misplaced in this case but recognizably hers. "What you let happen was wrong. You are going to have to live with that. I am not going to pretend otherwise." She nodded. Her face was open in a way it hadn't been in a long time, stripped of the careful performance she had been maintaining for months. "But you're my daughter," I said, "and what happens next is your choice to make." She reached across the table and took my hand and held it the way she had when she was small, with both of hers. We sat there for a while in the winter light and said nothing else, because there was nothing else to say yet. Some things take longer than a morning to find their footing. 6 months later, Ohio came into spring the way it always does. Reluctant and then sudden, the trees along Sycamore Street going green almost overnight while you weren't watching. I was at the main location on a Tuesday morning when Ray knocked on the back office door. He had something in his hand, a sealed envelope. It was from the probate attorney handling the restructuring of the Callaway Family Pharmacy Trust. "Everything's finalized," he said. I had spent those 6 months building something I should have built years earlier. A formal management structure with clear oversight, proper auditing, Diane's firm on quarterly retainer, a succession plan that reflected what the business actually was, not what any one person's ambition needed it to be. Ray had a new title, Store Director, Sycamore Street, with a salary that reflected 9 years of loyalty, and the particular courage it takes to tell an old man a hard truth when it would have been easier to say nothing. I poured 2 cups of coffee from the machine in the back and handed him one. He looked at the cup and then at me with the wariness of someone not accustomed to being thanked. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "I know." Outside through the window I could see the morning regulars coming in. The same faces that had been coming to this counter for as long as I could remember. The woman who picked up her husband's insulin every second Tuesday, the retired teacher who still called me by my first name, the young mother with the double stroller who always apologized for taking up space and never needed to. Margaret had known all their names. She had kept a notebook. I had found the notebook in the desk drawer 2 years after she died, the handwriting familiar in a way that still caught me off guard, every name accompanied by a small detail. Daughter just started college, moved from Cleveland. Afraid of needles, be gentle. I thought about what it means to build something real, not the square footage or the quarterly reports or the valuations that attorneys put in bound documents. The woman who picks up her husband's insulin, the notebook in the drawer, the 9 years of a young man showing up correctly every single day. That is what someone had tried to take from me. Not the money, not the management agreement. Derek was awaiting trial. His attorney was negotiating. Frank said the evidence was comprehensive enough that the likely outcome was a plea, significant restitution, and a sentence measured in years rather than months. The shell company associate, Douglas Harwell, had been charged separately. He had folded quickly, the way men who provide services to other people's schemes always do when the scheme collapses. Claire was in therapy. We spoke on Sundays. It was careful and imperfect and occasionally painful, and it was, I had decided, worth continuing. She was Margaret's daughter. That mattered. I finished my coffee and picked up my reading glasses from the counter. The wire-rimmed ones Margaret had given me for my birthday, the ones I had left behind on a Tuesday evening 6 months ago. I had stopped losing them since the fog cleared. Ray was still standing in the doorway with his coffee, watching the street outside. He was thinking about something. He had the particular stillness of a person turning a decision over. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Go ahead." "When you came back that night, when I showed you the footage," he paused. "Were you scared?" I thought about it honestly. The folding chair in the back office, the monitor with its cold timestamp, my son-in-law's hands moving with practiced efficiency over a keyboard in a room he had entered with a code I had trusted him with. "Not scared," I said. "Certain. There's a difference." He nodded slowly, like a man filing something away. I looked out at Sycamore Street, at the Tuesday morning light coming down between the buildings, at the woman with the double stroller who was already pushing through the front door and apologizing to nobody in particular for the space she took up. "Let's open up," I said. "I don't tell this story because I came out ahead. The money is mostly recovered, the business is intact. Those are facts, not the point. I tell it because for 8 months I believed what they needed me to believe. that my mind was going, that the careful, deliberate work of 30 years was slipping out of my hands because I was old and tired, and it was simply time. I believed it because the evidence was manufactured to be believable and because the people presenting it were people I had trusted with my life's work. If I had not forgotten my reading glasses on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday evening, I would have signed those papers on Friday and never known what I had given away or why. Pay attention to the fog. Not every fog is natural. Some of them are built specifically for you, door by door, month by month, supplement by supplement, engineered to make you doubt the very senses you have spent a lifetime sharpening. My name is on the door of 4 pharmacies in central Ohio because Margaret and I put it there together, 1 decade at a time. That name is not for sale. It is not transferable. It does not belong to ambition dressed up as concern. The hardest thing about all of it, the thing I still carry, is not the betrayal. Betrayal, once you see it clearly, has a clean edge. You know what it is. The hardest thing is the months before. Sitting in parking lots unsure of where I was. Reading the same label 3 times and still not retaining it. Looking at Margaret's photograph and feeling, for the first time, that I was failing the things she had trusted me to keep. That was not age. That was not my mind. That was someone else's work, done in the dark, for money. And if the man who stocked shelves beside me for 9 years had not pulled me into a back office and put his career on the line to show me the truth, I would have carried that shame into my final years, believing it was simply who I had become. I never took a single sick day in 30 years of running this business. Not one. I mention this not as pride, but as context. The day after everything came apart, I took the morning off. I drove out to the cemetery in Hilliard, where Margaret is buried, and I sat on the bench near her headstone, and I said out loud the things I should have said sooner. That I had listened to the wrong people. That I had let my guard down in the particular way that grief allows. Because when someone offers to carry the weight, you are exhausted enough to let them, and you don't always ask why they are so eager. That I was sorry. And then, because she would have wanted the practical version, I told her the plan. She would have approved of Diane's system. She would have liked Ray's promotion. She would have said something dry and precise about Derek that I won't repeat here. She would have told me to go eat breakfast. I went and ate breakfast, and then I went back to work.